Well, welcome back. And for more analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Khalid Dawood, Managing Editor of Al Ahram Weekly, and from Paris by Mr. Majid Bouden, Professor of International Law. Good evening, both gentlemen, and welcome to Qnews. Let me start here with Mr. Khalid. And Mr. Khalid, with Netanyahu reportedly removing the West Bank annexation plan from his meeting agenda, is he genuinely reconsidering annexation, or is this merely a kind of strategic delay aimed at deflecting international criticism and domestic unrest?
Well, thanks, Mona, for having me. Definitely that's a tactical move by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to simply delay the discussion of an expected decision by Israel to annex at least huge parts of the West Bank in retaliation for the expected increase in the number of countries, nations that would recognize the Palestinian state later this month when the UN General Assembly meets in New York. As you know already, Palestine, the state of Palestine has the recognition of over 140 nations, but what's expected actually by the end of this month, September 22nd, is that heavyweight nations, we might call them so, are going to join this recognition. Countries that are known for blind support and historic support to Israel, such as Britain, Canada, Australia, and Belgium, and today Finland. But all these countries have announced that facing this escalating Israeli war of genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza and the threats for the annexation of the West Bank, one of the key ways to continue to protect Palestinian rights is to recognize this Palestinian state, because otherwise the world would be basically giving in to the Israeli aggression policy of forcing realities on the ground and denying a long list of international decisions issued by the international courts and issued by the Security Council, recognizing the right of the Palestinian people to have their own independent state. But equally important, Mona, let me stress that, is what counts in Israel are the facts on the ground. So even if Netanyahu, because of requests from the American side, or at least the United Arab Emirates recently stated that if Israel recognizes or decides to annex the West Bank, that would be a red line ending any normalization prospects with any Arab country, to be honest. Already relations are deteriorating with all of Israel's neighbors, let alone the rest of the world. But when a warning like this comes from a country like the United Arab Emirates that have taken relatively advanced steps in normalizing ties with Israel, so maybe this would push Netanyahu to delay, but only for a short while, this discussion. It was only a discussion within the Israeli cabinet on this intention to annex large parts of the West Bank. But what counts again are facts on the ground. And someone like Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich have already announced plans to build thousands of units on the West Bank. Even though the original 1993 Oslo Accords were aimed at limiting the expansion of the Israeli settlement, what happened is in 1993, when the agreement was signed, maybe there were 100 or 150,000 illegal settlers in the West Bank. Right now, we're talking about 500,000 settlers. So Israel is, without announcement, without official kind of statements, is already annexing parts of the West Bank in a very thorough and planned manner in order to prevent the creation of the Palestinian state. And that's the real danger, especially when we have a right-wing government in the United States, such as that of President Trump, which is full of people who believe in Israel as a matter of religion, mentioning someone like the American ambassador to Israel, Mr. Mike Huckabee, who wouldn't mention the word West Bank and refer to the West Bank as Judea and Samaria. So that's probably one reason that convinces someone like myself that if there is any announcement that this decision is going to be delayed by a few days, that doesn't mean that the current Israeli government of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his extremist terrorist ministers, let me say that, such as Ben Gvir and Smotrich, are actually on the ground annexing already huge parts of the West Bank and are taking all measures to prevent the creation of a Palestinian state.
Right, Mr. Khalid, you opened a lot, and pinpointed your finger on a lot of points here. I'll get back to you because there were many important issues that you just mentioned. Let me go here to Professor Majid, and in light of the upcoming UN General Assembly meeting, now how significant is this month for Israel's political and diplomatic future, given the mounting pressures both domestically and internationally? And we're speaking here about or particularly from the European side?
Well, we have to here have an overlook about all what's happening in the world, especially what is happening in Ukraine and in Palestine and Gaza particularly. The Europeans have, it was seen that they have lost the game when the President Trump held a meeting with President Putin in Alaska. But the Europeans have played a very important shifting, diplomatic shifting, and they have now brought yesterday the Trump in their conception of how to resolve this issue in Ukraine, how this happened. First of all, the Europeans and the others, together with the European, all the international coalition of volunteers, they have recalled and they have reassured that the solution will be in a framework. This framework will be and can be only international law. And here we have seen Trump was represented by his representative, his envoy, Witkoff, accept that. Trump has accepted that. And why he has accepted that? For two reasons. The Europeans has played it very softly with Trump. They did not go into a confrontation with him. They have been very diplomatic with him. They have said very nice words with him, and they have offered him a solution. While on the other hand, Putin has played in a tough way. He went to Peking, to Beijing, and he had this. He assisted in this parade with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, the Korean leader of North Korea, and so they knew how to manage this matter. How the region will play the solution of the Gaza and the recognition of the Palestinian state, how they will play it, they have to stick to an alliance with the Europeans. Like Zelensky, he did. Zelensky, when he was called to go to see Trump in Washington, he asked the European to accompany him. He was accompanied by the Europeans. He flew with the Europeans to see President Trump at the White House. And the gathering was positive, and they have changed the game. It was a game changer. So now the Palestinian state will be recognized by the most important countries in the European community: France, Germany, Italy, Norway, Spain, etc., and with Canada, Australia, etc., and New Zealand. But this is not enough. Now we have to see the day after the recognition. The recognition will be confirmed. But what is the day after? The day after should be materialized by a deeper alliance between the Palestinians and the Europeans on the ground of what the Europeans said for the Ukrainian settlement. It means that they have to design the framework of national law, and the Arab countries of the region they have good relations with the Europeans and with the European Union. They must work on that to have the Europeans accompany the Arab countries and the Palestinian state to convince Trump to change his mind, like he did change it for Ukraine. And Trump, we have seen that he doesn't accept now what Netanyahu is doing. He doesn't accept it anymore. The change is slow, but the change is on its way.
Well, the dynamics of this trajectory is very complex, Mr. Boudin, because we're speaking here that they align on some on the issue of, or the European are aligning with or against Russia, but on the other side, they are not. Or they are aligning towards the Gaza issue, and they are against the Israelis' actions. Here, there is a kind of relevance in this story, but we'll get back to that. Let me here go to Mr. Khalid. And Mr. Khalid, you pinpointed your finger on a very important issue, which is the U.S. position towards this whole matter. Now, in line with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's warning that recognizing Palestine would lead to reciprocal Israeli response, plus what you mentioned of the Israeli ambassador statements about the West Bank, do you think that Washington, what could be Washington's stance towards the annexation plan in the West Bank or of the West Bank, and what risks does Israel face by publicly debating West Bank sovereignty before fully understanding the Trump administration's position here?
Well, Mona, let me remind everyone, and I don't think anyone has forgotten, that during the first Trump administration, he took unprecedented decisions, stopped with recognizing occupied East Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel, which is something, again, almost the entire world opposes. And despite all the American pressure at that time by Trump on other countries to take a similar step, maybe you're talking about 3 or 4 countries maximum, mostly ones that in Central or Latin America that are very close to the United States that took this step that contradicts international law. And also President Trump, during his first term in office, he recognized Israel's annexation of Syria's Golan Heights. And both, like these kinds of decisions, were in total contradiction to international laws and the pillars of the peace process that started with the Madrid Peace Conference, or even the Camp David agreements between Egypt and Israel, which is that all the territories occupied by the Israeli side on June 5th, 1967 are occupied territories, including, of course, East Jerusalem, including the Syrian Golan Heights. And the same applied, of course, to Egypt's Sinai that Israel pulled out from in 1982. So there is this recognition by the world that, I mean, the maybe part of the solution to the grave injustice that's been placed on the Palestinian people since 1948, at least, is to give them, like, you know, what's considered to be 22% of historic Palestine to form their own state so that they can have their own dignity, enjoy equal rights, and stop this, like, racist occupation by the Israelis that's basically, I mean, shocking and angering the whole world. And that even though many countries in the Western world, I mean, Europe or the United States, strongly condemned the Hamas attack on October 7, in which 1,200 Israelis were killed, there is this recognition that the Israeli response has gone far beyond self-defense, as they say, in response to that attack, and it went as far as seeking revenge from the entire Palestinian people, forcing them to evacuate from their territories. They want the Palestinians in Gaza to move to northern Sinai in Egypt. They want the Palestinians in the West Bank to be forced to leave to Jordan and basically empty the occupied Palestinian territories from Palestinians. So unfortunately, the Trump administration has a record in backing this kind of Israeli expansionist policies, as we've seen with Jerusalem and as we've seen with the Golan Heights. And as you've said, I mean, like Mr. Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, has been very aggressive against countries that have decided to take the right side of history, let me say that, and recognize the Palestinian state. We've seen how Trump reacted to Canada, nearby Canada, when it announced that the Prime Minister there announced that he's going to accept or recognize the Palestinian state. Canada got a higher tariff rate compared to other countries, despite the historic relationship between the two nations and the interdependence of their economies. And Trump wrote openly that was in reaction to Canada's decision to recognize the Palestinian state. but Trump has been, ridiculing the importance and significance of the decision to recognize Palestine by France and by Britain and Australia, and saying that these are like meaningless decisions. They mean nothing on the ground, and that the priority should be to the fight against Hamas and making Israel secure. But the key problem, Mona, in this U.S. approach, or in the approach of the current Trump administration, is that it denies basic Palestinian rights that are recognized by the rest of the world. And let me tell you, I mean, since Israel started its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza in 1967, they've been taking all steps on the ground to confirm their occupation and their desire and plan to evacuate the Palestinian people. But what remains at the end of the day is what the rest of the world believes, what international institutions believe, International Court of Justice. All these have confirmed that Israel is an occupation force that is carrying out racist policies against the Palestinian people, and that this should come to an end. Of course, it's a huge, incredible disaster what's happening in Gaza, the martyrdom of more than 63,000 Palestinians so far, and it's even definitely going to get worse if we see the expansion of the ongoing Israeli operation to occupy Gaza. But at the end of the day, I think, as even Trump himself admitted, that Israel has lost it in front of the international public opinion. He called it the PR war. He's a businessman, so he considered it like a PR issue. But again, I mean, whether Israel and the United States like it or not, on the long term, Israel is losing, and the Palestinian people, they're going to get their rights, like the South Africans gained their independence from the racist regime there, despite the support from the United States at that time.
Mr. Khaled, I have to ask you, but I'll get to you about that, because you're speaking about Trump as a businessman, and you are referring to him from this point. Religious, in a way or another, it is a theocratic way of thinking. I'll get back to you about this, Mr. Khaled, but Professor Majid, how do global pressures on Israel compare to the domestic demands from the far-right ministers regarding West Bank sovereignty?
Well, this global pressure now on Israel is becoming effective. It's producing consequences. When you have seen Netanyahu, who has decided or called for an annexation of the West Bank, and now he's pulling back. Why? Because he has seen the pressure, and then he has seen how the Trump administration is now finding a solution with the Europeans. We have to see that everything is interlinked now in international relations, and we cannot think about the Palestinian solution and the establishment of a Palestinian state, which is a step toward the solution, as an isolated item. We have to see how all these is working, how all these items are working, and they are interlinked. And what the Palestinians have to do now, what the Arab countries have to do. The matter is how to find the alliances, when and with whom. Now the alliances there is a pool of alliances here, which is created by these European countries. And we can see the similarity. All the countries now whom are going to recognize the Palestinian state this month, in a few days, they are nearly the same than the coalition who is supporting Ukraine. What is the common ground? In Ukraine, they are saying that they are founding their action on international law. When they are asked to make application of international law in the Gaza, in the Palestinian conflict, they cannot go away from this basis. So we have the situation is mature now to push it ahead. And whatever the blames, whatever what we can do, say about Trump, about what he's doing, etc., it's okay. But Trump is moving, and Trump can change his position several times a day. And what the European has succeeded for Ukraine, we have to make an alliance with them to make also happen the solution of the Palestinian state. And Trump can recognize the Palestinian state.
It's all about strategic moves that are being done on the ground. Now, here let me go to Mr. Khaled. And Mr. Khaled, based on what we were speaking about and that the approach the US and Israel is dealing with, from your point of view, what role does the upcoming UN General Assembly play in either accelerating or complicating Israel's strategic decisions, that, if it does at all?
You know, Mona, part of the irony is, on one hand, we see like Mr. Trump and Mr. Rubio minimizing and ridiculing the attitude by a vast majority of the world countries to recognize Palestine, and saying it's meaningless, it's not important, and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we see the Trump administration taking the unprecedented step of, like, you know, preventing Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas from attending the upcoming General Assembly in order not to increase the kind of excitement around this step that's expected to be taken by several important countries. Of course, the former president, U.S. President Reagan, has taken a similar step back in 1988 when he prevented late Yasser Arafat from attending the UN General Assembly. But that was before the Oslo agreements and before the wide-scale recognition by the world of the state of Palestine. And it was a step. It's a step against someone like President Mahmoud Abbas, who has a long record of supporting a two-state solution. And he even openly criticized Hamas and condemned the October 7 attacks and called for the release of Israeli hostages. So, I mean, when you take such kind of steps against a nearly 90-year-old man who has a record of supporting the two-state solution and a peaceful settlement, this definitely weakens further the position taken by the U.S. administration and, of course, the Israeli side. But, I mean, again, the usual reaction by the United States and Israel, as we've seen so far, is more kind of sanctions, punishment measures to be taken, whether against the Palestinian Authority or against countries that plan to take this step. But again, I mean, facing the wide-scale condemnation of the Israeli action worldwide and the recognition by almost the entire world, except for the Trump administration, that Israel is committing massive war crimes against the Palestinian people. We're already seeing how Israel is acting today in Gaza, destroying the bridge, all the major buildings that they have in Gaza city for no reason. I mean, except inflicting revenge on the Palestinian people and trying to put more pressure on them in order to flee their homeland and to go towards Egypt, and making totally irresponsible statement by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel is ready to open its border from the Rafah side of Gaza, but it's Egypt that is closing the border because, yes, and Egypt is closing the border because we will not allow this mass evacuation of the Palestinian people, liquidating the Palestinian cause, because the solution, the long-term solution that will bring stability to this region is the recognition of the Palestinian state, the recognition of Palestinian rights, and reaching a permanent settlement, not this continuation of the war policy that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pursuing.
This is exactly the situation here. Let me go here to Professor Majid. And just briefly, please, sir, what tools does the international community have to deter or penalize Israel if it proceeds with the annexation and its, of course, plans?
First of all, they have a lot of tools. They have sanctions. First of all, they will not recognize the annexation. They can have sanctions, and they can also open the border of Gaza if they use Article 7 of the UN Security Council Charter and there are different ways. We can be afraid that the US will oppose a veto, but when you look at what the President of Ireland has suggested, the venues are open. In diplomacy, nothing is final. Netanyahu cannot go with his policy. He cannot annex the West, cannot continue this war in Gaza without reactions. And the reactions are now amounting to another level. But this, the Arab countries and the Palestinians must play a role now, which is higher, and one of the ways is to have this alliance with the European countries and with other countries that and to take the ball of the recognition of the Palestinian state as a leverage.
A kind of united stance from the international community at large, along with the Arab one. Very clear here, Mr. Boudin, and that was Mr. Khaled Dawood, managing editor of Al-Ahram Weekly, and Mr. Majid Boudin, professor of international law. We thank you very much, both gentlemen, for your insightful analysis. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.